I was sitting in the hospital corridor when my phone rang. It was my daughter, Diane. Her voice sounded strange, almost icy. "Mom, we're going to Australia tomorrow. I sold the chalet and your car. We needed the money. See you," and she just hung up. I couldn't say anything. The phone just sat there in my hand. I had nothing but that house and car. What was I going to do? How could my daughter do this to me? Well, that's my story. Here it is. For 42 years, I raised her, sacrificed for her, and she tossed me aside like trash. But I took a deep breath and smiled, because there was something my darling daughter didn't know. My name is Margaret, and I'm 65 years old. And up until that moment, I thought I knew my daughter. I had been widowed 6 months earlier. My husband, Henry, had died of a heart attack. That morning, we were pruning roses in the garden, as we had done every Sunday for 42 years. He handed me my gloves, kissed my forehead and said, "Today is going to be a wonderful day. My love," those were his last words. His smiling face, his eyes sparkling with joy when he saw me, are always fresh in my mind. I miss him so much. Diane was much more present in my life since then. She didn't want to leave me alone. She cared about me, or so I thought. She visited 4 times a week. She helped me with funeral arrangements and grocery shopping. She even suggested I go to the doctor for a checkup. "Mom, you need to take better care of yourself now that you're alone," she'd say with that smile I mistook for affection. But now I realized that smile was for personal gain. For years, the chalet had been our refuge. Henry and I had bought it when Diane was 12, a labor of love and sacrifice. We went there every winter break, making memories. We celebrated birthdays and New Year's. Diane would bring her boyfriends, then her husband, Liam. I cooked for everyone, cleaned, and did the laundry. It was our family tradition. I never imagined he'd see it as just money. And the car, that old car Henry cared for like a child. He washed it every Sunday, changed the oil like a religious ritual, and always parked it in the same spot under the shade of a tree. Diane knew what that truck meant to me. It was the last thing I had left of him. The seat still smelled of him. When he hung up, I sat there in that uncomfortable green plastic chair, surrounded by sick people. And for the first time in months, I didn't cry. A strange thing happened inside me. A calmness I hadn't felt since Henry's death. Because in that moment, I remembered something I'd completely forgotten. 3 days before his death, Henry had given me a brown envelope. "Margaret, put this in your dresser drawer. If anything happens to me, open it after a while, but only when you feel ready." I put it down without much thought. After the funeral, amidst all the pain and adjustments, I simply forgot. But there it was, waiting for me at home. The nurse called me into the exam room. The doctor examined me and said I was healthy for my age, that I just needed more rest and better nutrition. I nodded and smiled, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept thinking about that envelope, the coldness in Diane's voice, and how Liam was probably behind all of this. He'd never liked me. He'd always seen me as a burden. I can't even begin to describe how upsetting this situation was. It's a truly awful feeling when someone's most beloved child, their only possession in this world, acts like this. It makes your throat tighten. I left the exam room and walked slowly toward the bus stop. I no longer had a car, according to Diane, but I couldn't help smiling as I waited. There was something poetic about it all. My daughter thought she'd left me with nothing. But what she didn't know was that my Henry, my dear Henry, was a man who always planned ahead. The bus arrived, and I sat by the window. I watched the city go by. Houses, shops, people rushing everywhere, each with their own tragedies, their own secrets. I had mine too, and I was about to discover them. When I got home, I went straight to my room. I opened the dresser drawer, and there was the brown envelope, right where I'd left it. I could feel a few documents inside. Henry had written my name on the front in neat cursive. I sat down on the bed we'd shared for so many years and took a deep breath. It was getting dark outside, and the house was filling with those familiar shadows that no longer frightened me. I opened the envelope slowly, as if I were opening a birthday present. What I found inside would change everything. What I found in that envelope took my breath away. It contained legal documents, title deeds, bank certificates, and a handwritten letter from Henry. Tears welled up in my eyes as I read the familiar handwriting. My dear Margaret, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I was alive, but I wanted to spare you the worries. Over the years, I've invested our savings in property and businesses. We don't just have a chalet. We have 6 other properties, including the apartment building where Diane and Liam live. We also have shares in 3 companies worth more than you could ever imagine. You're rich, my love. You've always been rich, but now you're rich on paper, too. My hands trembled as I looked at the documents. There were deeds to houses in different neighborhoods, a downtown apartment, a small motel on the beach, and indeed, the 15-story apartment building where my daughter lived. Henry had been the silent owner for 10 years, but he had put everything in the name of a company I didn't know. Statements for accounts I never knew existed, with seemingly unrealistic figures. Henry had been a bus driver for 40 years, but he was also apparently a very astute investor. He had quietly multiplied every penny we saved, every sacrifice we made, and I knew nothing about it. In the letter, Henry explained that he kept our true financial situation secret because he didn't want me to worrying about it, and because he didn't want Diane to know. You know our daughter, Margaret. If she knew we had all this money, she'd change her mind. I want her to love us for who we are, not for what we have. How ironic. Our daughter had left us with nothing, when in reality, we had everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered around the house, touching the old furniture and the knickknacks Diane had always criticized as out of date. I looked at the family photos on the wall, especially the one of her sitting on Henry's lap, laughing when she was 5. Where did that sweet little girl go? When did she become so cold, so calculating? The phone rang early the next morning. It was Diane again. Her voice sounded different, softer, but I had learned to be wary of these shifts in tone by now. Mom, how are you? We transferred the money from the house and car sale. We deposited your share into your account. It's not much, but it's enough to get you by for a few months, until you find a smaller place. My share? I asked, keeping my voice calm. Yeah, Mom, of course we weren't going to leave you with nothing. We gave you 30%. Fair, right? We need money to invest in Australia. Liam has an incredible business opportunity there. 30%. 30% of my own belongings. How generous of them. I understand. So when are you leaving? This afternoon. Our suitcases are packed. We'll be staying for at least 6 months, maybe longer, if things go well. But don't worry, Mom. When we get back, we'll help you find a small apartment. Something that suits your needs. It suits my needs. It's like he knows my needs. Okay, have a safe trip. Diane. Oh, Mom, I knew you would understand. You've always been so understanding. We love you so much. And she hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, and for the first time in months, I laughed. I laughed like I hadn't since Henry died. The situation was so absurd it was comical. My daughter had robbed me, kicked me out of my own home, and delivered an unbearable, patronizing speech, all to finance a likely disastrous Australian adventure. But what bothered me most wasn't the money. It was how easily he tossed me aside. Money, a piece of paper, is fleeting. What's permanent is love, respect, and family. 42 years of my life dedicated to him. Sacrifice, unconditional love. And he had erased me from his life with a 2-minute phone call. That's what truly hurt. My daughter. When Bub loved money so much, we didn't raise him like that. I couldn't accept it, it was so hard. I checked my bank account online. They had indeed deposited what must have seemed generous to them but was a mockery to me. They had sold the chalet for far less than it was worth, probably because they needed cash fast. They had also sold Henry's truck for pennies. That afternoon, from my window, I watched Diane and Liam load their luggage into a taxi. He was carrying 2 huge suitcases, and Diane had a very expensive-looking handbag. I watched them laughing, kissing, making plans. They looked like 2 young people excited about an adventure. They never glanced at my window, never said goodbye. As the taxi pulled away, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea. Henry's papers spread out on the table. I had some decisions to make. I could call a lawyer. I could reclaim my property. I could take back what he'd taken. But something inside me told me there was a better way, a more educational way. Mr. Thornhill, Henry's lawyer, he had been at the funeral, offered his condolences, and told me to call if I needed anything. I needed him now. Ms. Caldwell, good to hear from you. How are you? I'm fine, Mr. Thornhill. I need to see you urgently. I found some documents from Henry that I don't understand. Of course, you can come to my office tomorrow morning. I'll be there. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in months. I dreamed of Henry. He was sitting in his favorite chair, reading the newspaper, just like he did every morning. And when he saw me, he smiled and said, "It's time, my love. It's time you stood up for yourself." I woke with a strange feeling. It wasn't exactly happiness, but it wasn't the sadness I'd felt for months either. It felt like determination. For the first time since Henry's death, I had a clear purpose. I would get mine back, but in a way Diane hadn't expected. The next morning, I dressed more carefully than usual. I put on my wine-colored dress, the one Henry always said made me look elegant. I fixed my hair and put on some makeup. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman I hadn't seen in a long time. I saw a strong woman. Mr. Thornhill's office was in the city centre. It was an old but elegant building with marble floors and large windows. He greeted me with a warm smile, but when I showed him the documents, his expression changed completely. Ms. Caldwell, this is a lot more than I thought. Henry was a very smart man. Look, according to these documents, you own the building where Diane lives. I know, Mr. Thornhill. I've looked into it all. What I need to know is what I can do legally. Mr. Thornhill explained that everything was in place, the documents were legal, and that I was the rightful owner of all the property. He also confirmed what I already suspected. The sale of the chalet was illegal because Diane had no right to sell it. We can take back the house immediately, Ms. Caldwell, and we can also take legal action against your daughter for fraud. No, Mr. Thornhill, I don't want to take legal action. I want to do this differently. I want everything to remain confidential for now. Can you help me? He looked at me curiously but nodded. Of course, you're my client. What do you need? I need you to secretly take back the chalet. I want you to do whatever it takes to cancel that sham sale and help me gain true control of all my properties, especially the building where my daughter lives. I understand. It will be a process that will take a few weeks, but it is totally doable. Excellent. And Mr. Thornhill, I don't want anyone to know I'm behind this. At least not yet. When I left his office, I felt like I'd woken up from a very long dream. I walked the streets of downtown, watching the people, the buildings, life going on as normal. But everything had changed for me. I had a plan. The weeks that followed were the strangest of my life. Officially, I was a poor widow abandoned by her daughter. But secretly, I was a wealthy woman quietly reclaiming my assets. Mr. Thornhill was efficient, calling me every few days with updates on the legal proceedings. I decided to stay home for now. It was mine, after all, and Diane probably expected me to move into a one-bedroom place. Every morning, I'd wake up, have breakfast at the same table Henry and I had shared for years, and then go for a walk around the neighborhood. Everything Henry and I did, I would do it alone every day. I would imagine him next to me and feel happy. His absence was really hard. Henry left me a huge legacy, yes it is true. But what if you said that if Henry were alive right now, he would sit in front of me and smile at me? But you said we would take his entire fortune? I wouldn't even think about it for a second. Money is temporary and worthless. Love is permanent. Neighbors greeted me with the mixture of pity and curiosity they reserve for new widows. My lifelong neighbor, Iris, came over one afternoon as I was watering the plants in the front yard. Margaret, darling, is it true that Diane went to Australia and left you all alone? Yes, Iris went with Liam. They had business plans there. And how are you going to make ends meet, honey? We all know Henry didn't leave much money. If only you knew, I thought. Don't worry, Iris, I'll be fine. Do you need anything? I can bring you food, help you with the shopping. That's very kind of you, but I'm fine, really. Iris looked at me with that look I knew so well. It was the same look I'd gotten after the funeral, a mixture of pity and a small measure of relief that this wasn't her tragedy. Well, if you need anything you know where to find it. These conversations were repeated over and over. The butcher, the baker, the woman at the corner market. Everyone spoke to me in that gentle tone they used on the unfortunate, and I nodded, smiled, and thanked them for their concern. But deep down, a part of me was enjoying the performance. It was like living their double life. Mr. Thornhill called me one Wednesday morning. Mrs. Caldwell, I have good news. I was able to cancel the sale of the chalet. The buyers didn't know it was a scam, so they got their money back without any problems. The house is yours again. Excellent, Mr. Thornhill. Okay, the building where Diane lives. That's more complicated. Technically, you've always owned it through the company, but we need to make some administrative changes so you have direct control. That should take another 2 weeks. Excellent. Keep me informed. After I hung up, I sat in the kitchen with my coffee and thought about Diane. She'd been in Australia for 3 weeks and I hadn't heard from her. No phone calls, no texts, not even a postcard. For her, I had ceased to exist the moment she received the money she needed. But I knew that would soon change. I decided to visit the chalet. I took the bus to the beach, a route Henry and I had taken hundreds of times. The house was just as I remembered it, small, cream-painted, with a porch overlooking the ocean. The new owners had put a few potted plants on the steps, but otherwise everything was the same. I sat on the curb opposite and stared at her for an hour. I remembered summer afternoons when Diane was little, running on the beach, building sandcastles. I'd be in the kitchen making salad while Henry barbecued fish. Diane would bring her friends, then her boyfriends, then Liam. All those happy moments had been reduced to a simple business transaction. An elderly gentleman came out of the house, and when he saw me sitting there, he approached with curiosity. Are you okay, ma'am? Yes, thank you. I just remember. I knew the old owners. I knew them very well. It's a shame what happened. They told us the old woman was very ill and needed to sell quickly. We thought it was an opportunity not to be missed, but it turned out the sale was illegal. We had to give the house back. Did you know them personally? No, we did everything through intermediaries, but they told us the girl was handling everything because the mother couldn't take care of it. What a sad situation. I thought, if you only knew how sad this situation really is. Well, I'm glad you didn't lose your money. Yes, luckily everything turned out well, although now we have to look for another house. We really liked this house. I left with a heavy heart. It wasn't just the money that hurt. It was how easily Diane lied about me. A story about my illness. He had made it up. He had used my supposed vulnerability to justify his actions. To him, I was not a human being with feelings, but an obstacle that needed to be removed. They had disabled me for money. What more could it have been? How big was it going to be? Now I ask you, if you were in my situation, how would you feel? What path would you follow? That night I called Mr. Thornhill again. Mr. Thornhill, I need your help with something else. I'd like to get Henry's truck back too. This is going to be more difficult. Ms. Caldwell, the truck was in your name, but your daughter had a power of attorney allowing her to sell it. How is this possible? Power of attorney a few months ago, after our husband's death. Don't you remember? That's when Diane started planning all this. I vaguely remembered signing some papers she'd brought me, saying they were to facilitate funeral and estate arrangements. I was so stunned by the pain that I signed them without reading them. How naive I had been. I understand, Mr. Thornhill. Is there any way to get it back? We can try, but it will be more complicated. We would need to prove that you signed that. Power of attorney under deception or duress. Let's do it. I want to take back everything they took from me. Diana, my biological daughter, was still thinking about her inheritance at her father's funeral. How could she not have felt sorry for her father when I was in such a bad state? When and where had my daughter lost her heart and love? Over the next few weeks, I developed a strange routine. In the mornings, I was the poor widow everyone knew. I'd go out shopping, talk to the neighbors, keep up appearances. But in the afternoons, I was a businesswoman. I'd pore over Henry's papers, talk to Mr. Thornhill, and plan my next move. I learned things about finance I never thought I needed to know. I discovered that Henry was much smarter than I'd thought. Every investment he made was carefully calculated. For example, the building Diane lived in wasn't just profitable from rent. It was in a rapidly appreciating area. Also Diane's, I discovered her husband was in heavy debt. He had taken out a loan using the apartment they lived in as collateral, unaware that he wasn't the real owner. When the banks learned of this, they were in serious trouble. Mr. Thornhill called me one Friday with important news. Ms. Caldwell, we've finalized all the paperwork. You now have full control of all your property. I also got Henry's truck back. The beer turned out to be an acquaintance of mine, and when I explained the situation, he agreed to return it for a small compensation. Excellent work, Mr. Thornhill. Now I want you to do one more thing. I want you to send a letter to my daughter. What kind of letter? Evacuation notice. There was silence on the other end of the line. Ms. Caldwell, are you sure you want to do this? I'm completely sure. He's decided I'm not important in his life. Now he's going to find out how important I really am. I understand. Would you like me to send it to Australia? No, I want you to give it to me when you get back. I have a feeling he'll be back very soon. I wasn't mistaken. That same afternoon, Iris came running to my house with news of the new neighborhood. Margaret, did you know that Liam is having trouble with the bank? My brother-in-law who works at the bank told me that they are investigating the loans he took out using the apartment he lives in as collateral, but it doesn't belong to him. Really? Yeah, and apparently Diane didn't know anything. They say she have to fly back from Australia to sort this mess out. What a mess. Yeah, and the worst part is, apparently Liam lied about the job in Australia too. There were no jobs. He just wanted to avoid the debts here. Perfect. Everything was going exactly the way I wanted it to. Diane, she had trusted Liam, sacrificed her relationship with me for him, and now she was discovering he wasn't the man she thought he was. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and looked up at the stars. Henry always said that stars were the spirits of people who had lived full lives, watching over their families from the sky. If that were true, then he was there, watching his plan unfold perfectly. Thank you, my love, I said to the sky. Thank you for taking care of me even after your death. The next day, Mr. Thornhill called me early. Ms. Caldwell, I have news. Your daughter has just arrived in the country. She's at the airport, alone. Alone. Yeah, apparently Liam stayed in Australia. Rumor has it they had a huge fight. I see. Did you send the letter? I'll send it today. Should receive it tomorrow. I hung up the phone and stood in the kitchen, feeling a mixture of tension and anticipation. After weeks of silent planning, the moment had finally arrived for the first real move. Diane was about to discover that her mother wasn't the defenseless victim she'd thought she was. Diane came to her apartment Tuesday night. I knew this because Iris, who seemed to have informants all over the neighborhood, came to tell me the next day. Margaret, your daughter came back last night. I saw her come in with a suitcase, but she looked awful, pale, with dark circles under her eyes, like she'd been crying the whole flight. Alone, all alone. And the strange thing is, Margaret, when the doorman asked for his keys, they weren't there. He had to get the manager to open it with a spare key. Interesting. Liam had the keys, which probably meant he'd decided not to come back. Or maybe Diane had found out about him and ran away. Either way, my daughter was back, and she'd be getting my little welcome gift very soon. Mr. Thornhill called me the same afternoon. Miss Caldwell, the letter was delivered an hour ago. The doorman confirmed that your daughter received it personally. Excellent. How much time did we give it? 30 days to vacate the apartment according to legal standards. But Miss Caldwell, are you sure you want to do this? After all, she is your daughter. Mr. Thornhill, my daughter kicked me out of my own home with a 2-minute phone call. She sold my stuff without even asking. She treated me like trash. Now she's going to learn that actions have consequences. I understand. I just wanted to make sure you'd thought through all the implications. I've thought of it, Mr. Thornhill, all of it. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake, imagining Diane's face when she read the letter. First surprise, then disbelief, then panic. She'd probably think it was a mistake, that someone was trying to scam her. But when she called to confirm, she'd discover it was all perfectly legal. The next day, the phone rang at 8 a.m. as if it had been waiting for my call. It was Diane, and she sounded desperate. Mom, I need to talk to you urgently. Good morning, dear. How was Australia? Mom, I don't have time for this. I got a really weird letter yesterday. It said I had to vacate my apartment in 30 days. This has to be a mistake, right? Do you know anything about it? An eviction notice? How strange. From whom? From a company I've never heard of. Robert had used his own name for the company. How poetic. No, dear, I've never heard that name. Are you sure the letter is legitimate? That's what I want to know. Mom, you need to help me. I don't know what to do. Liam left me in Australia. He ran off with another woman, and now I'm back. I don't understand what's going on. There it was, confirmation. Liam had left her, probably when the money ran out, or when he realized the legal problems at home were more serious than he'd thought. Poor Diane, she'd sacrificed her family for a worthless man. I'm so sorry, dear. Where are you right now? He's at the apartment, but I don't know how long I'll be there. Mom, can I come over? I need to talk to someone. There's no one else. The irony was perfect. Now, when the man she left me for left her, she remembered she had a mother. Of course, dear. Come over whenever you want. I'm home. I am on my way. I hung up the phone and looked in the mirror. I had to be perfect for this performance. I wore my most conservative grey dress, pulled my hair into a simple bun, and practiced a concerned but fatalistic motherly expression. Diane arrived, she would find a poor, defenseless widow abandoned by her daughter. An hour later, Diane arrived. When I opened the door, I was struck by how poorly she looked. She had lost weight, there were deep circles under her eyes, and her expensive clothes looked wrinkled and unkempt. Her eyes were red from crying. Mom, he said, and for a moment I thought he was going to hug me, but he stopped, as if he suddenly remembered how things ended between us. "Come in, dear. Do you want some coffee?" "Yes, please." We sat in the kitchen, at the same table where I had read Henry's papers weeks before. Diane looked small in that chair, lost, just as she had when she'd come to tell me about her school problems as a child. "Mom, I'm so sorry for the way I left. I know I didn't treat you well. It's behind, my dear." "No, not anymore. I treated you badly. I said terrible things, and now," her voice broke, "now there's no one." "What happened to Liam?" "He ran off with a 25-year-old hotel waiter in Paris. There were no jobs in Australia. It was all a lie. He just wanted to escape debts here and finance his adventure with the money we made from selling your house." "All the debts?" "Yes, Mom. Too much debt. He took out a loan using the apartment we lived in for years as collateral. But now I find out that he doesn't own the apartment. How is that possible?" There it was, my opportunity. "I don't know, honey. Real estate is so complicated. The problem is, now the banks are after me for Liam's debts. They say I'm responsible because we're married. And then there's this eviction notice. Mom, I don't know what to do. I have no money. I have no job. I have no place to live." She started crying. Real tears, genuine despair. And for a moment, my motherly heart softened. I wanted to hold her, to comfort her, to tell her everything would be okay. But then I remembered the coldness in her voice when she called me from the doctor's office. How easily she had dismissed me. The way she spoke to me as if I were a burden. "Have you spoken to a lawyer about the letter? Liam took the rest when he ran off with that woman. So what are you going to do?" "I don't know. I thought maybe I could stay with you for a while, just until I could find a job and get a little place." There it was, the question I'd been waiting for. After kicking me out of my own home, selling my belongings, treating me like garbage, now he wanted me to save him. He wanted him to save the pathetic situation he'd created from the consequences of his own actions. "Of course, dear, this will always be your home." Diane looked at me in surprise, as if she hadn't expected it to be this easy. "Really, Mom, after everything that happened?" "You're my daughter, Diane, that will never change." He stood up and hugged me this time. It was the desperate embrace of someone drowning, clinging to the only thing they could hold on to. I hugged him back, but not with the same unconditional love I had before. Now there was calculation in the embrace, strategy. "Thank you, Mom. I promise I'll find a job quickly. I won't be a burden." "Don't think about that right now. Rest, regroup, and then we'll look at your options." Diane left her apartment that afternoon to get some things. I stayed in the kitchen, thinking about how easy it had been. She had come to me just as I'd planned, broken, helpless, without options. And best of all, she didn't suspect a thing. To her, I was still the poor, abandoned mother, helpless. But that was only the first part of my plan. Having him live with me would give me the perfect opportunity for the next phase. I would let him settle in, make him feel safe, and let him believe he had found refuge in my home. And then, when he least expected it, I would teach him the difference between being poor as a choice and being poor as an outcome. That night I called Mr. Thornhill. "Mr. Thornhill, I need you to do one more thing. Tell me, Miss Caldwell, I want you to look into Liam's debts. I want to know exactly how much he owes to whom and what legal options I have to separate them from my daughter. It will take time, but it can be done." "Excellent. And Mr. Thornhill, I want you to keep this absolutely confidential. No one can know I'm behind this investigation. Of course, Ms. Caldwell, may I ask what your final plan is?" "My plan, Mr. Thornhill, is simple. I will save my daughter. But first she needs to understand what it truly means to hit rock bottom." When I hung up, I poured myself a glass of the wine Henry saved for special occasions. I hadn't had a special occasion like this in a long time. The game was on, and for the first time in months, all the cards in my hand were good. I abandoned you when you needed me most. Yes. I treated you like trash. Yes. And yet you saved me. Yes, but not in the way you expect. I didn't save you by paying you to keep making the same mistakes. I saved you by letting you hit rock bottom so you could learn to save yourself. Mr. Thornhill interjected tactfully. Miss Brooks, your mother paid all the legal fees to get you out of Liam's debts. She also recovered all the fraudulently sold properties. You are completely free from legal trouble. And the cleaning job I got. You can quit if you want, I said. But I hope you don't. From where? Because that job teaches you something you never learned when everything was easy. The value of your own effort, the honor of honest work, the importance of appreciating every dollar you earn. Diane wiped away her tears and looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't the look of a daughter needing her mother, but the look of a grown woman who respected another woman. Do you forgive me, Mother? I forgave you a long time ago, my dear. The question is, can you forgive yourself? I don't know. I've done unforgivable things. People make mistakes. Diane, it's what we do after we admit those mistakes that matters. Mr. Thornhill left us alone in his office for a few minutes. Diane and I sat there in silence, trying to process what had happened. Mother, I want you to know something. Even if you didn't have this money, if you were a really poor widow, I would learn the same lesson. Which class? There's nothing more precious than having someone who loves you unconditionally. The only thing that's kept me sane these last weeks is knowing I have a home with you. That no matter how much I've messed up my life, you're still my mom. That will never change, Diane, but you can never take family for granted again. You have to earn it every day with respect, with gratitude, not just with words, but with actions. Mr. Thornhill's office with a completely new relationship. We were no longer mother and daughter united by necessity or need. We were two grown women who had chosen each other after going through the most difficult test. The weeks that followed were about rebuilding, but not the kind Diane had expected. Even though she knew I now had the resources to solve all her problems, she decided to keep the cleaning job overnight. Mom, I have to finish what I started, she said one afternoon, as she was getting ready for work. I can't just go back to living a comfortable life as if nothing had happened. Are you sure? You don't have to punish yourself forever. This isn't a punishment. It's a way to remember who I am and who I want to be. I watched her put on her work uniform. Something unthinkable. A few months ago when she was living in a luxury apartment with Liam, but there was something different about her stance, her movements. She was no longer the broken woman who had wept at my door the day she arrived. She had found honor in honest work. That afternoon Iris came to visit, as she had every few days for the past few months. Margaret, there are some very strange rumors floating around the neighborhood. What kind of rumors? People say you're not as poor as we think. Someone saw Diane leaving a very fancy lawyer's office downtown, and then they saw her paying off all her debts at the bank. That's a lot of money, Margaret. Iris had known me for 40 years, and I knew I couldn't fool her for long. What exactly do you want to know? I want to know if my friend of 40 years is lying to me about his condition. I poured a cup of tea and sat down across from him. It was time to be honest with someone else. Robert left so much more than we know, Aurora. So much more. How much? Enough so that Diane and I never have to worry about money again. Iris was silent for a moment, processing the information. And why did you claim to be poor all these months? Because Diane needed to learn something she couldn't learn any other way. Him the whole story, Diane's brutal phone call, my silent revenge plan, the weeks of letting him get to the bottom of it, and finally the statement in Mr. Thornhill's office. Margaret, this is brilliant and terrible at the same time. Is it scary? Yes. because you let your own daughter suffer when you could have helped right away. But it's also brilliant because I understand why you did it. Diane needed to learn to appreciate what she lost. If you just gave her money to solve her problems, she would have learned that there's always someone to bail her out on her bad decisions. Completely. But, Margaret, did it pain you? To see him cry every night? To see him tired and defeated when he went to work every morning, every day? Every night I saw Diane cry. Every morning I saw her go to work exhausted and defeated. But if I had saved her too soon, she wouldn't have learned the full lesson. And you think he found out? Look for yourself. Diane knows she has access to money now so she can live comfortably. But she chose to keep her job. She knows she could have moved to a better place, but she decided to stay with me. She knows she doesn't have to worry about debt, but she's using her own savings to help other women in similar situations. Is he helping other women? Yes, she's made friends with the ladies she works with and is using some of her office cleaning money to help her co-worker who's struggling to pay for her son's daycare. Iris smiled. This isn't the Diane who went to Australia. No, it's not. This Diane understands that money is a means, not an end. Honor comes from work and respect, not material possessions. That night, when Diane came home from work, she found him reading in the living room. Mother, I have to tell you something. Today, Mrs. Morrison asked me if I was the daughter of the rich woman on the north side. What did you say? I said yes, I have enough money that I don't have to work. And you know what the next thing you asked was? What? He asked me why I was still working. I explained that I had to prove to myself that I could stand on my own 2 feet. And what did he say? She laughed and said, honey, that's the difference between being rich and acting rich. Your mother taught you how to be really rich. Mrs. Morrison is very clever. It is, and it helped me understand something. It's not the money you have, it's how you relate to it and how you use it. Diane sat down with me on the couch. Mom, I've made a decision. I'm going to continue living here with you. But not as a girl who's moved back into her parents' house. I want to stay here as a grown woman who's chosen to share her life with Mom. What's the difference? I will pay my share of the difference in expenses. I will contribute to the upkeep of the house and view this relationship as a partnership between 2 independent women who love and respect each other. Diane, there's no need for. Yes, it is necessary. Mom, our relationship needs to be different than it was before. First, I was a girl who took my mother's love and care for granted. Now I want to be a grown woman who values and protects the most important relationship in my life. What about your job? I'll keep working, but cleaning offices isn't necessarily forever. I want to go back to school. I want to prepare myself to do something more meaningful with my life. But I want to do it step by step, earning every opportunity. Do you have any idea what you want to study? Yes, I want to study social work. These last weeks have taught me how many people go through difficult situations with no one to support them. I want to use the resources we have to help other women who have gone through what I went through. It was perfect. Diane had not only learned to appreciate what she had, but she had also found a way to use her experience for something constructive. What about Liam? Mr. Thornhill told me he was arrested in France for a sham marriage. He'll be deported soon, but to be honest, Mom, I don't care anymore. That chapter of my life is over. Don't you feel any resentment? No, Liam unknowingly did me a favor. If he hadn't left me and betrayed me, I would never have hit rock bottom. And if I hadn't hit rock bottom, I would never have learned to truly appreciate what I have. That night, for the first time in months, I went to bed with complete peace. My plan had worked perfectly. Diane had not only learned the lessons she needed to learn, but she had also emerged from the experience stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Henry would be so proud. 6 months later, Our lives had found a new balance neither of us could have imagined. Diane graduated with excellent grades in her social work studies, and I decided to dedicate some of my resources to establishing a foundation to help women experiencing domestic violence and financial abandonment. "Mom, I got a letter from the university," Diane said one morning, walking into the kitchen with an envelope in hand. "I've been accepted to a graduate program. I start next semester. But Mom, I want you to know I'll be paying for it with my own savings. The salary at my job in the city isn't great, but I've saved enough to cover the basics." He had learned to value every dollar he earned, to live on just enough for the basics. "Are you sure? We can easily afford graduate school." "I know, but I have to do this on my own. It's part of who I am now." That afternoon, Iris came to visit, as she had every Friday for the past few months. She had become a confidant, watching our transformation with fascination. "Margaret, I have to admit something," he said as he poured himself a second cup of tea. "At first I thought you were being very cruel to Diane. What do you think now?" "Now I think you're the smartest mother I know. Really look at your daughter. Really watch her. She was right." The Diane who sat in the hall studying for her exams was completely different from the woman who had left for Australia months before. This Diane possessed an inner coolness, a confidence based on her own achievements, not material possessions. "I know yesterday I saw Diane at the market buying vegetables for a family she helps through her job. And when I asked her why she used her own money instead of the government budget, she said some things can't be measured by official budgets." That night, Diane and I had dinner on the porch, something that became a tradition. It was our time to talk about the day, make plans for the future, and just enjoy each other's company. "Mum, I got a really weird letter today," she said as she cut the salad. "From whom?" "It's from Liam. He's writing from prison in France. In the letter he says he regrets everything he's done and asks me to forgive him." "And how do you feel?" "Honestly, I feel nothing. No anger, no sadness, no desire for revenge. It's as if that chapter of my life happened decades ago, not months ago." "Are you going to reply?" "No, not because I hate him, but because there's nothing to say. The Diane who married him is gone. This Diane has nothing to talk about with him." I was struck by the maturity in her voice. The woman sitting across from me had developed an inner strength that came from hitting rock bottom and getting back up on her own. "Do you know what this whole experience has taught me, Mom?" "What?" "True love isn't about telling you what you want to hear. True love is about teaching you what you need to know, even if it hurts. It's a hard lesson to learn, but a necessary one. Liam told me what I wanted to hear. He made me feel special. He convinced me that I deserved a life of effortless luxury. You taught me that true wealth comes from hard work, respect, and genuine relationships." That night, after Diane went to work in her room, I sat alone on the porch, looking up at the stars and thinking of Henry. I had promised him I would take care of our daughter, and I finally felt like I had kept that promise. I didn't provide for him by giving him money when he needed it. I provided for him by teaching him how to take care of himself. I didn't save him by solving his problems. I saved him by letting him learn to solve them on his own. The next day was Sunday, and we had planned to visit the chalet together. For the first time since I'd moved back in, Diane hadn't wanted to go before, saying she needed time to process everything that had happened. "Are you ready?" I asked as I got into the truck. "I think so." The ride was quiet but comfortable. When we arrived, Diane stood in the truck for a moment, gazing at the house where so many families had spent the summer. "It looks exactly the same," he said finally. "Some things don't change, but others do. I am not the one selling this house." We went in together. The house was clean and tidy, just the way Robert and I had kept it for years. Diane went through every room, touching the furniture and looking at the family photos hanging on the walls. "Mom, I want to apologize. You already apologized, dear. No, I want to apologize specifically for this house. Not just for selling it, but for reducing all our family memories to a commercial transaction. Forgiven. This house represents 40 years of family summers, birthdays and Christmases. Daddy built that porch with his own hands. You planted that garden. I learned to swim at that beach, and I turned it all into money to finance one worthless man's adventure. Henry liked to read on Sunday mornings. Do you know what hurts me the most? What? When I sold it, I felt nothing. It was just another property. Now here again, I can feel Dad in every corner. I can hear his laugh, smell his morning coffee, see his reading glasses on the table. It's here, Diane, it's always been here. I know, and I know you're proud of how I handled all of this. We spent the entire day together at home, cooking, cleaning, and fixing small details. It was a ritual of reconnecting not just with the place, but with the values it represented. As the sun began to set, we sat on the porch that Robert had built, looking out at the ocean. Mom, I have a proposition. What? I want to turn this house into a temporary shelter for women leaving domestic violence situations, a place they can stay while they rebuild their lives. It was a great offer. Your father came up with this idea. He loved that the beach house would serve to help other families. I think it's a good idea, dear. We could use some of the foundation's resources to maintain it, and I could oversee the program through my job. Are you sure you want to turn our family sanctuary into this, Mom? The best shelters are shared. Your father always said a home isn't really a home until it opens its doors to others who need love. He was right. Robert was always generous with our home, inviting relatives, friends, and neighbors who needed a place to stay. That night, we returned home with a completely renewed relationship. We were no longer mother and daughter united by obligation or necessity. We were two women who had consciously chosen to build a life together on a solid foundation of shared love, respect, and a shared purpose. That night, before I fell asleep, I spoke quietly to Henry. We did it, my love. Our daughter finally understood what really matters. And for the first time since Henry's death, I felt him answer me. I always knew you would know. You are both stronger than you think. Justice came not as revenge, but as education. Not as punishment, but as transformation. And in the end, we had both gained something far more valuable than money. We had gained an authentic relationship, built on a solid foundation that no future crisis could destroy. This story is a lesson for many of us. Money should always be secondary. Family ties, love, and respect are always the most important things in life. In this story, the mother was lucky because her wise was foresighted and she secured her wise by leaving an inheritance to her wise. If there was nitrogen monoxide inheritance, this story maybe would not have such a happy ending. That's why children should be taught this love and family sense from childhood. No child should overvalue money. My story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me so I can bring you more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I look forward to your comments on the story. Below, you can see two new life stories that I highly recommend. There are many more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect.